Hey, welcome back to the channel, guys. That's Matthew White's channel. Today, guys, we are continuing on with the my favorite WWF LJN tournament, and we are still on round 2. Of course, we're gonna be on round 2 for the next, including this video, for the next 18 videos. So, a 20 video second round, and for the first 2 videos, man, it already feels like both of those videos were semifinals type of atmosphere, especially that first video. So this second round, I feel like it's going to be an extremely difficult selection. So I'm kind of excited to be making these videos. I thought I might take a break between making the first round and the second round, considering the first round was 40 videos deep. But I'm really glad I didn't wait as long to start making the second round, because like I said, so far it has this whole semifinals type of atmosphere to it. The matches have been really solid, gut-wrenching based on some of the early eliminations already in this second round, but it's been a lot of fun. So I'm really excited to keep going on with the tournament, and let's get started and see what figures we will have as part of round 3 today. So first couple of videos, or drop something. First matchup is going to be Davey Boy, and he's going to square off against Sid Vicious. And I got, what did I just drop? Dropped something earlier. Whatever's on the floor, I'm going to pull that. So on the floor we had Steamboat Wrestling Rider, so we'll use that one. And he will go up against Big John Studd. Awesome. And I said, man, Big John Studd, that's like one of my favorite figures, right? So I was kind of disappointed it took like 34 videos or 36 videos, however long it took to get the original Big John Studd in the first round. So it's nice that it only took like 3 videos in the second round to get that figure in. Next matchup is going to feature Nikolai. So that should be Nikolai Volkov original, as he does battle against the blue Jim Duggan. Last matchup for the video is going to feature Owen Hart, King of Hearts. Ooh. That's a good one. That is a really good one. Papa Shango, the Junkyard Dog variant. Alright, so I'll go ahead and get the figures pulled, and we will begin shortly. Alrighty, so figures pulled, and we are ready to begin this first matchup, which is going to feature Davey Boy Original, as he squares off against Galoob 2-Up of Sid Vicious. And of course, we will start with Sid Vicious. We already know, man, one of the single greatest wrestling action figures ever made. The greatest Galoob figure of all time. And getting this figure as a Galoob 2-Up was absolutely perfect. Now, when Ram Treasures first blew up Ric Flair, I'm like, I was not expecting Galoob of all the different toy lines that they could have selected. I'm like, Galoob was kind of like an odd choice. Now to this day, I'm like, man, freaking Galoob. I'm like, thank you. I'm like, I'm ecstatic that they chose Galoob, and it kind of makes sense because Galoob and LJN are both they're both stationary figures. They have non-movable parts, so it kind of makes sense in that facet of design and whatnot. So, and you came out with Ric Flair, then you followed up with Sting. I'm like, Ric Flair, okay, maybe. I would have loved to have seen Sid Vicious be the first one, because, like I said, he is the best Galoob figure. My all-time favorite piece, and most definitely, best believe when this tournament, when I decided to come out for year 3 of the My Favorite LJN tournament, this is one of those front runners. Now, I didn't do it before the beginning of this round, but I might do it before the beginning of round 3. And I've talked about wanting to pick out like maybe 10 or so figures that I covet the most. Figures that I personally believe have the best opportunity to win the tournament. Now, I might bring out, I don't know, let me look at the shelf of, let's say Abdullah the Butcher from Wrestling Writer. An absolutely incredible piece. Let's say I put him in my listing of top 10 figures that have the best chance of winning this tournament, and then he could be a round 3 elimination, and it's like, well, shoot, so goes that figure. So it's none of these figures are definitely, none of them have like a guarantee to win. There's only one figure that I legitimately put on a pedestal, and that's because of his previous success, and we all know who that figure is. But Sid Vicious, of all the different tournaments I keep making, I keep thinking that no matter what tournament I make, that this figure alone is going to help put that, because it's going to end up putting him over the top. Or if I have a tag team tournament, him pairing him with another figure like Barry Windham, for example, for the tag team tournament, would help put him over the top. But they just keep missing by the skin of their teeth. And this could be the tournament where I finally say, you know what, enough is enough. My all-time favorite figure has to win. So, getting Sid Vicious, there's been very few figures that I was more excited to get than Sid Vicious. I was biding my time to wait when this figure finally came out, and when it finally arrived on Ram Treasure's website on Etsy, best believe I was going to be the first person to pick that one up. And he goes up against Davey Boy Smith, one of my all-time favorite wrestlers. I absolutely love the British Bulldog. Now, you guys know I wasn't familiar with the British Bulldog tag team. When I say British Bulldog, all I could think about is Davey Boy. I didn't know about Dynamite as a kid, didn't know about the LJN figures in particular, and the Dynamite Kid and Davey Boy Smith figures, they're very small figures, right? And when you compare them to someone like the Dream Team, Brutus and Greg are excessively tall figures. In comparison, from Ram Treasures, you got Bad News Brown. Good figure. Glad to have him because he was one of those guys that were supposed to be released in LJN / Grand Toys for Series 6, and that just never happened. So when you got guys like the Bushwhackers and Barbarian, Bad News Brown, Brother Love, etc., it was nice to add them to the collection to say that, hey, Series 6 is now officially complete type of deal. But Bad News Brown, like the British Bulldogs, has that one arm up, and I don't know, I just don't like figures like this. And of course with the mirror version of Bulldogs, that also kind of ruined it for me. Essentially, figures are like this that have the way that they're down like so, they're unplayable. So you're really only going off of one arm per play. And you know what, they do have really good one-arm body slams and, you know, good flying clotheslines and stuff. So they are serviceable figures. They're not the worst in the world. But when I talk about figures and I give them estimated location of where I'd put them among the original figures, Bulldogs are probably like in the 40 range, 50 range or something. They're not exactly my most coveted figures. Overall, solid pieces. Were the Bulldogs ever going to win this tournament? No. Could they have been first round eliminations? Absolutely. Could they have made it to the third round? Possibly, with the right competition. Is British Bulldog ever going to defeat Sid Vicious? There are maybe 5 figures in this entire tournament that I think have a legitimate chance of beating Sid Vicious. And among those 5 figures, depending on how I'm feeling that particular day, one figure could beat Sid Vicious. Another day, Sid Vicious could beat that figure. I could say Big Boss Man, right? Big Boss Man, one of the best LJNs ever made. Sid Vicious could beat him one day, Big Boss Man could beat him the other. So it's really a toss up. You guys kind of saw the same thing with Kamala and Big John Studd in my first 2 tournaments, where the semifinals kind of played differently each tournament because you kind of feel differently depending on your mood or the amount of time you talk about a particular figure or your time you spent looking the figure over whatnot. But because I have so much history with Sid Vicious and I've just coveted this figure for so long, there is a reason why I kind of always felt like this figure could win any tournament regardless of what it is. So for me, this was a no-brainer. Sid Vicious easily defeats British Bulldog to move on to round 3. Alright, next matchup is going to feature another fan favorite, Big John Studd, taking on Ricky Steamboat. And I kind of find this funny. The last time that these figures actually were in the same video the last time too. And I think that was awesome because in that video, I remember having Big John Studd, and I remember bringing up Sid Vicious because I kind of compared the two, right? And I've always said that I really enjoyed the Big John Studd figure because he was so comparable to that of Sid Vicious. Now, the one thing that Big John Studd has over Sid Vicious is girth and weight. And weight, for whatever reason, it really means a lot to me. That's why I really love the Yokozuna Hasbro figure. When you hold the figure, it's the way that it sits in your hand. It just sits so beautifully when you put his rump in your hand, right? Because you really don't hold it around the waist. You hold it around the butt. Because, again, it's a perfectly round, situated figure, right? And the weight is solid. Just so fun to play. Same thing with Mabel from Hastel Toys. So the big, heavier figures, King Kong Bundy from LJN, I love those figures. So he has weight to it. Got a good, fantastic grip. Fantastic play pose. Body slam pose. 2B body slam pose. Incredible. And he has that very reminiscent Sid Vicious pose that I covet. Now a lot of your Series 1 figures like Hogan, Stud, and Andre the Giant. And then you throw in later on in Series 4 when you throw in Kamala. All of them have very comparable poses. Not identical 100%, but very similar or similar enough, right? So I enjoy those 4 figures for a particular reason. And he's just a brute force. I talk about dominating figures. When you put the figure in, he comes into a match, Royal Rumble, etc., you come in and he just really just beats up on the other wrestlers. And you really treat the other wrestlers like little kiddies because, again, he's just a really tall figure. I mean, what was Big John Studd? Was he like 6'10", 6'11", 7 feet, something like that in real life? I love the stories with him and Andre the Giant. Because, you know, Big John Studd was a giant in his own respect. I think Andre was like 7'4". Again, I think Big John Studd was somewhere between, I think he was 7 feet. I think he was about 7 foot tall. And he'd step over the ropes same way Andre would. And Andre always wanted to be the giant. And that's why he really didn't like facing tall wrestlers. He wanted to really tower over his opponent. And Andre would just sit there. He would literally beat the crap out of Big John Studd in real life. And Big John, you know, after the match, he'd like scurry out of the ring and go to the locker room, like, want to get the heck out of it before this maniac tries to kill him. You hear those stories all the time from all these different wrestlers, and it's always entertaining. Bad News Brown, I think I heard from him. I think I heard from Hogan. I think I've heard from Vince McMahon in interviews. So it's just fun stories, man. It's just I don't really remember a lot about Big John Studd, man. I don't really remember watching him. Obviously, growing up, he was more of an 80s guy. And if I did see him, it was probably like flashback stuff, maybe videos or something. But I definitely would have seen him in like rewatching old videos of like battle royals and stuff. I would have seen him in stuff like that, but I don't remember any like in particular matches, not really. So, but I absolutely love his figure. And then the wrestling writer, Ricky Steamboat. I don't remember if it was this one or if it was the Robert Jackson Ricky Steamboat. I think maybe it would have been the Rob Jackson Steamboat, but one of these Steamboat figures went up against Andre, but it was a Andre Series 2 repaint, so it looked like Blackstrap. And I think that's like the only reason the figures moved on to the second round is because of that reasoning. So, Ricky Steamboat, original figure, not one of my favorite figures. Play pose wise, arm down. Again, you can't really do much. The right arm up, it's very Scott Steiner-ish when you think about Galoob, right? So, in that respect, again, it's the play pose sucks. And the kind of like the little grip that he has with the claw. I don't know, Ricky Steamboat it's not a very playable figure for me. And it's something you can make use out of if you need to. But like, if I'm a kid or hell, if I'm a grown adult and I say to myself, you know what? I'm bored. I want to sit down. I want to wrestle these guys. I want to have some matches. I want to have some fun. I got nothing else to do in life. You know, I'm retired. I don't want to watch TV. I don't have any video games I'm interested in playing. I could sit there and sit in a chair and twiddle my thumbs. Or I could come downstairs and make videos for you guys. Or I could, pull out these figures and let's say, let's bat them together and see what we can come up with. Ricky Steamboat would not be a figure I would use long term. Like, I've talked about Royal Rumbles, I would use him in there, pick him up every so often, but this isn't a go-to figure. Now, when you look at the customs from what Eric did with his, I think Rob did a whole lot more with his figure, so I enjoy that figure a little bit more. But they both have the white pants variant. And he had on like this little belt strap to the pants. Eric did. He had a little headband and whatnot. I think he upgraded the head mold a little bit. So there are subtle changes to the figure, but there's not nearly enough. Custom, original, it doesn't matter. There are very few, if any, Ricky Steamboats. And to be honest, there's only one Ricky Steamboat in this tournament that I think could possibly defeat Big John Studd. And that is the 1990s Hasbro designed actual dragon Ricky Steamboat. That's the Ricky Steamboat I remember from childhood. I don't remember any of this stuff. Not the AWA Ricky Steamboat. Not the babyface from the 70s, 80s. Ricky Steamboat, when he left WWF, he was in WCW, and I think he was still vying for, championship belts and whatnot. And I think he's the only guy or one of very few wrestlers in history that was always a face. He was never a heel, and I thought that was pretty special. So, and I kind of think back, I'm like, it's sad that Hogan ever turned bad, but realistically, Hogan was a bad guy for many years himself. I mean, not until he got to WWF, it became like this mega superstar did he become a good guy, and even his first run WWF, he was a bad guy with Freddie Blassie and whatnot. So, post Rocky 3, he finally became like a good guy and was vying for the heavyweight championship against the Iron Sheik, etc. So, but this to me is like it's another no-brainer. Big John Studd, Sid Vicious in the finals, maybe. All right. Next matchup is going to feature Nikolai Volkov going up against Hacksaw Jim Duggan. We will start off with Nikolai, the figure that started it all for me. I don't know when it was. I want to say maybe 2020. Maybe it was 2019. Maybe it was 2018. 2021. I think we all know what I'm talking about. The Netflix series, what was it called? The Toys That Made Us. So we saw those documentaries, right? And I was interested in seeing the Ninja Turtles one because Ninja Turtles was a huge part. It was a awesome collection that I had as a kid. Plus, I wanted to see the different Ninja Turtles that they had over the years. But I also wanted to see the wrestling because I didn't know Hasbro figures were made by Hasbro. I knew what the figures were. Like, I knew if I started seeing the type of figures, even if I never had them as a kid, I would know that they were the type of figures that I would have had. And when I learned that they were made by Hasbro, I'm like, holy crap. That's so obvious. Like, how could I have not known that? But I didn't know Galoob figure. Actually, I may have known Galoob. For whatever reason, I may have grown up knowing the name Galoob. Maybe because I actually paid attention to the card. I don't know. But I didn't know who Hasbro figures were made by. Not until I started collecting. And not until I watched that show. But then they started at one point talking about these 8-inch rubber figures that I'd never heard of. Now, LJN, I can't say I'd never heard of LJN before because you look at all these WWF video games from the 90s and whatnot, like Steel Cage Match and WrestleMania and all of these different wrestling games. We had all of those wrestling games as kids. So, I mean, there were like a ton of them. And they're all made by LJN. We had them all. So it's like, I had to have been familiar with LJN. I just probably forgot the name as the years passed. But I watched that show. I'm like, you know what? The story that I bring up and that I've talked about in the past was, it kind of reminded me of Storage Wars. What is Storage Wars on? I want to say AMC. Maybe not AMC, maybe A&E. I'm going to say A&E. So Storage Wars, and then later on, you had a Storage Wars Texas. And during like one of the previews episodes before Storage Wars Texas aired, one of the guys, one of the buyers who's going to be the star of the show, he's like how he got pissed off about Storage Wars becoming a TV show because one of the things he did in life was buy storage auctions, buy storage lockers on auction, and obviously we saw the contents. And then Storage Wars became a TV show, and suddenly all of these people started buying storage lockers, and they're newbies. They're not professional buyers or anything. They're amateurs, so they're raising up the prices of the storage lockers and what have you. So more and more people were showing up to these auctions than ever before. So obviously, like I said, the prices were skyrocketing. So the Storage Wars TV show was really detrimental to his business, essentially. So I kind of think about that, and I thought about the Toys That Made Us. I thought about the LJN figures. I'm like, man, people are going to watch this TV show, and suddenly LJN figures are just going to go flying off the shelves, so to speak. And I wanted to be a part of that. I'm like, man, I don't know how much of this I'm going to buy, but I'd like to at least have something. And the very first figure I ever bought, I bought on eBay. I got it for, I don't know, $10 maybe. Purchase price, I mean, obviously shipping and taxes made it cost more, but I'm going to say $10 purchase. And I got the figure in, and I held it in my hand. I'm like, damn, they got me. All it took was one figure, and I was hooked. Suddenly, I had no interest in simply buying these figures for resale purposes. I actually had a legitimate interest in buying these for personal collection. Now, obviously, I've had a million LJN figures that I've sold. I have a million more LJN figures right here that I have for sale. But a lot of these are figures that I bought in bundles, and you buy a bundle of 10, 15, 20. Maybe there's a figure or two in there that you need for your collection. Or maybe you find a bundle of figures and they're selling for a good price, and you buy them up because, hey, maybe you want to customize them or something. But I mean, you guys see my custom wall, so hey, that's always an option. I've sent a lot of figures to be customized, so. But yeah, like I said, Nikolai Volkov, this was the figure that started it all for me, and for the longest time, this was in my top 5 of all-time favorite LJN figures. This is an awesome freaking piece. Good-looking figure, great fighting pose, comes with accessory. Obviously, accessory is something I had to buy later on. It didn't come with accessory when I first got it. The only thing I don't like about this particular figure is the big hump on the back, but other than that, it was solid. And there are plenty of customs that I have where they utilize a Nikolai Volkov figure. Like, I got Gold Dust with this particular figure. I got the Mountie utilizing this figure. I've got Sergeant Slaughter where they've utilized this figure. So I do have a number of figures where, obviously, Nikolai Volkov is, like I've always said, is a very customizable figure. And then we got Hacksaw Jim Duggan. I always love the blue Hacksaw because he's always reminiscent to how I remember Hacksaw Jim Duggan from childhood, and how I remember like the Hasbro. Obviously, Hasbro had black boots, but it's fine. I'm trying to think if I rate Hacksaw Jim Duggan as a higher quality figure than the Nikolai. If I do, I think I put like Nikolai at like number 15. So if I do rate Jim Duggan higher, Jim Duggan might be like a number 14 figure for me. So I don't remember my listing how high I rated this figure, but I do believe I had him in the top 20. And what I found interesting, and the last time I showed this figure, is that in that same video, in fact, in the same matchup, he was going up against Roddy Piper, original. And Roddy Piper and Hacksaw Jim Duggan were actually the same figure, just kind of like mirrored a little bit. And Roddy Piper is one of my least favorite figures, but Hacksaw is like one of the best, right? And I'm like, wow. Also, I think because Roddy Piper is much thinner, where Hacksaw is obviously a thicker figure, so I think that obviously plays a lot into it. Now, I could simply say, hey, I grew up watching Hacksaw Jim Duggan. He is obviously a fan favorite of mine, one of my top 10, top 15 favorite wrestlers ever. I didn't really watch Nikolai Volkov growing up. I remember him more from joining the Money Incorporated later on, being dressed in black as Nickel and Dime Nick Volkov. And I didn't even remember that name, Nickel and Dime, not until I got his custom figure from Mark Hackenberg. Both great figures. Either one of these figures, I mean, just because one figure, I mean, whoever wins this one doesn't necessarily stop at round 3. Either one of these figures has potential to go 4 or 5 rounds, so it's not like you have you're downgrading if you choose one over the other. I can say at least Volkov has 2 workable, playable arms, where Hacksaw is really just a one-arm, left-hand punch type guy. I mean, right arm, I really wouldn't use much of that. But I think I rated Hacksaw much higher than Volkov. One of the first things I said in my first tournament was that I wasn't going to put nostalgia or feelings about a certain wrestler. I wasn't going to use that as part of making my decision. The second time I made this tournament, I said, forget that. Absolutely, your personal feelings about a character is going to play into your decision, because it has to. And the fact that I tried to eliminate that from my first tournament and let it be based solely on the figure itself, it was hard. Because of course it's hard to eliminate those feelings and that nostalgic memories and all that. I have so much more capacity, so much more knowledge of Hacksaw Jim Duggan than Nikolai Volkov. But this tournament is more than just that. And like I said, without this figure, who knows? Maybe I do not get into LJN. If I never decided to buy the Nikolai Volkov figure, if I didn't pick it up, hold it in my hand, look him over, and be like, darn, maybe I would not have felt the same way about LJN, and I wouldn't have bought any more figures. Let's say Jimmy Snuka was the first LJN figure I ever bought. At that point, I probably would have held Jimmy Snuka, would have been like, this sucks. And I probably would have had absolutely no interest in them. Or, over time, maybe I would have started picking up LJNs, but maybe it would have been months and months later. I don't know. Because there are a lot of stuff that I've picked up that I would have had no interest in, and probably still don't have much of interest in, but I buy them because it's nice to have additional collections, especially for a channel like mine where it's nice to show off different collections and kind of do reviews of them and whatnot. But so I think Nikolai Volkov has to be my winner to move on to round 3. As I said, there is no wrong answer here. Either figure, whoever moves on to round 3 has a chance to move further than just the 3rd round. So they can be 4th and 5th round figures if necessary, with the right competition. Now, I think that this last matchup is probably going to be the biggest battle of this video, which is going to feature Papa Shango going up against the King of Hearts, Owen Hart. Now, with Owen Hart, it's simply a Bret Hart repaint. They took Bret Hart, repainted his sunglasses, right? They painted his hair blonde, and they basically did away with the pants and gave him flesh tone and whatnot, and gave him this basically a more full-on singlet to kind of cover not only the chest, but covering a portion of the legs. So like I said, they got rid of the pants essentially. So they really went full out on this Owen Hart figure. And when I compare this to the Macho Man Owen Hart figure, I will take a repainted Bret Hart over that stupid head mold Owen Hart any day. To me, this is a real Owen Hart custom. Now, if someone one day, like Brand Treasures, for example, and Print Fury, Zashman, someone like that, they come out with like a real Owen Hart head sculpt, and they come out with like a resin or a rubber figure, and they got a more authentic custom figure, fine. I will covet that figure probably more, but right now, when you look at the 2 customs of Owen I have, this to me, this is the bread and butter of the two Owens. And this right here, this is not an easy easy matchup. So even though I do list Bret Hart with a higher rating, like my Bret Hart figure, I put him at like number 13 or something. Yeah, so I'd say about number 13 among my favorite LJN figures, right? And I think I dropped Junkyard Dog down to like number 16, let's say. 16 or 17, let's say 16. And even though I've always said the grip of a Junkyard Dog was very weird, right? So it's a fantastic play pose, but the grip of a Junkyard is not good, so it just makes it a little less enjoyable than it should be. I think turning Junkyard Dog into Papa Shango was brilliant. I think that this pose works beautifully for the Junkyard Dog figure. The head looks awesome, and some of the things that I think some folks might complain about if they had this figure, but I actually like it. like when you look at like the breakage in the arm, right, and this does move. So for this perspective figure, I've always said I enjoyed that for one reason. When you kind of look at the neck and the breakage of the arm, I kind of feel like it's like a more of a zombie-ish type of look. Yeah, he's supposed to be like a witch doctor, but you put this figure out for like display on like Halloween. I love the fact that it's kind of gives you more of a horror-based theme. So yeah, he's a witch doctor, sure, but again, he's got that dark skinned. He's got kind of that morbid flesh-eating skin tone. I would say a little bit. So I like it. I like it as a zombie type figure. I think it's fun. I think it's unique. The Based on a Bret Hart versus Junkyard Dog, I mean, yeah, they are very comparable figures in that sense. But I've always said, even though Bret Hart, I rate him very high. I rate him high because of namesake. I rate him high because of the value of his LJN figure. But his LJN figure is nothing more than a right underarm punch. That is it. He is a punch-only figure, and at least Junkyard Dog, with his pose right, you can do pretty much anything that you deem necessary. And with Papa Shango, he has a legitimate accessory. It is a built-in accessory. The figure looks absolutely amazing. Owen Hart, this is a figure I wanted to see go 3-4 rounds. I don't think he would have made 5 rounds, but like I said, I think 4 rounds would have been an awesome run. But I got to go with Papa Shango. I just don't think that the Owen Hart figure would make it as far as Papa Shango. Like I said, I just think this is such a fun and unique take on this particular figure. I do have other Papa Shangos in the tournament, and I think this might be one of the most enjoyable pieces. So for this respective matchup, Papa Shango does move on to round 3. All right, so that does complete round 2, episode 3. I'm actually going to stay down and film another video because this was, just under 40 minutes, so not too bad, considering most videos are 45 minutes, so. As always, guys, thank you so much for watching, and be on the lookout for tomorrow's tournament video. Thanks, everybody.